Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 10 from Mr. Siddiq Ahmadi's class for IR in Islamic perspective. And we are group 10 with the topic of the use of force under Islamic law. And in our group, we have Mayang Sita Dewi, Gibran Irfan Abdullah, Cese Hafara Munray, and me, Herzana Bilah Zetungkagi. We can start from the beginning. Next. So first we would like to explain what is jus ad bellum. Jus ad bellum is a Latin word for the meaning of war or the law of war. And in this Islamic tradition, jus ad bellum is a part of jihad. The meaning of jihad itself derives from the word jud, which means exert, strive, and struggle. There are two main kinds of jihad, which is greater or major jihad and less or minor jihad. The internal search is regarded as a major jihad, which is the search of self-satisfactory by winning the pleasure and blessing of God. The external level, which is the minor jihad, is the search of self-protection, and search of self-protection should not be violence. Jihad is a struggle to find solution to a problem. Taking an example from the resolution of international conflicts or issue with the use of diplomacy, diplomatic negotiation is one of the example of jihad. Next. Okay, so next is the theory of jihad, theories of jihad. The first theory that we will be talking about is the defense theory. In Al-Quran, ayat 22, Surah 22, ayat 39, I'm sorry if I'm wrong. The use of force is allowed. The permission to fight is given to those against who fighting is launched because they have been wronged. So the verse indicates that the permission to use force is given when Muslims are wronged. And also there is verse 22, 40, explaining that what wrong is pointed towards people who are getting injustice without any reason, but just the reason of believing that God is Allah. So when a Muslim is being wronged, when they are basically just being Muslim. This verse takes us to the other meaning of defense in jihad, which is defending Islam. When others fight against others fight against those who believe in Allah's ways. The verse Surah 2 ayat 90 sums it up by stating, fight in the way of Allah against those who fight you and do not transgress. In verse Surah 22 ayat 39, it emphasizes on the fact that Allah does not like transgressors. The phrase "who wronged you" state that Muslims should never be transgressors or shouldn't be the person who first started the use of force. It also emphasizes that doing fighting combats is only allowed in actual combat or qital. In the Quran, ayat Surah 4 ayat 75 stated that the use of force is also allowed under the circumstances of defending a fellow Muslim who is being oppressed and unable to defend themselves. It can also mean that the use of force is permitted to defend those who are oppressed for being in Islam and are unable to defend themselves. And this is also correlated with the Quran Surah 5 ayat 32 that also stated that whoever saved the life of a person as if he has saved the life of the whole humankind. It is also stated in other verses that is using force against another Muslim under circumstances of two groups with believers that fight each other, seek reconciliation between them, and if one of the group commit aggression against the other, fight the one who commits the aggression until they come back to Allah's command. Next, Ibn. And for the second theory of jihad is the offense theory. The offense theory is based on the two arguments, the progression of rules on the use of force and the universality of the Islamic religion. In early years before the Medina period, the use of force in jihad is not allowed. Patience was suggested very highly in Mecca, and there are also verses that shows that force was not allowed, which is the one who defend himself after being wronged. There is no blame in such people, which is Surah 42, ayat 41, if I'm not mistaken. And also, blame in fact is upon those who wrong people and make mischief on earth unjustly. And if one observe patience and forgiveness, it is, of course, one of the courageous conducts. In the Medina period, where Prophet Muhammad migrates to Medina on a new command was revealed as it has been stated above, and force was allowed as self-defense. Two separate commands was revealed about the polythesis and the people of the book. Polytheist, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, stated in verse Surat 9 ayat 5 and Surat 9 ayat 29, the either use of force to convert polytheists and people of the book or is needed, or kill them if they refuse. The supporters of the progression argument argued that those verses abrogated the first Surah 22 ayat 39 and Surah 2 ayat 190. The rule of jihad progressed from where patience and forgiveness was suggested to the use of force was allowed in self-defense, to obligatory jihad against polytheists and people of the book. In this case, if this verse and the interpretation is allowed, it means that Muslim must either force polytheists to convert or kill them, which could mean committing genocide. In order to fully understand the verse Surah 9 ayat 5 and Surah 9 ayat 29, in ways it would not be against other verses, we must examine the Quranic and historic context. So talking about those verses, chapter 8 of the Quran was revealed shortly after the Battle of Badr and dealt with the lesson of the battle, which are the question of war, body, the virtues necessary for good fighting, victory against any odds, and clemency and consideration for one's own people and for others in the hours of victory. Chapter 9 follows the argument on chapter 8 and stated Bismillah in the name of Allah. It is not written in the beginning, becoming the only chapter in Quran that starts without the word Bismillah. Is the last Quran to be revealed. Verse 1 to 29 of chapter 9 was revealed before the Tabuk battle on October 9th. I'm sorry, I don't know what AH is. It mainly talks about what is to be done if the enemy break faith and is guilty of treachery. Chapter 9 talks about three kinds of people: the polytheists, or the pagans, the people of the book, and the hypocrites, which is those who pretend to be Muslims but never wholly embrace Islam. In Medina in the later period, there are four kinds of polytheists. First wave of the group polytheists whom the Prophet Muhammad has made a peace treaty with, which is the Hudaybiyah, and the Qurayshia, the group who broke the treaties. The second group of the polytheists was one of whom the Prophet Muhammad had made peace treaties with for a fixed period, and treaties were not broken, which is the Bani Zamrah and Bani Madlaj. The third group were the ones whom Prophet Muhammad had open-ended peace treaties and their terms were not fixed. The fourth group was one of whom the Prophet Muhammad had not treaty at all. The first three verse in chapter 9 of the Quran stated that the first and second group who were given a 4-month guarantee of safe passage. Um, the first chapter 9 um, uh, 7 was addressed to Banu Hamzah and Banu Kinana, who remained faithful to their treaties, while verse 9:5 was addressed to Quraysh, who broke the terms of Hudaybiyah. The scared months expired. When the scared months expired, kill the polities wherever you find them and catch them and besiege them and sit in ambush for them everywhere. Then if they repent and establish salah and pay zakah, leave their way. Was addressed to the people of the book to fight those and then verse 929 was referred to people of the book, fight those people who of the book who do not believe in Allah nor the last day, and do not take as unlawful what Allah and His Messenger have declared as unlawful, and do not profess the faith of truth until they pay jizya with their own hands while they subdued. The revelation of the verse 929 was given because the rumor that Byzantines or Romans, which is the people of the book, were prepared to attack Arabia. So we can conclude that the verse 9, the first Surah 9 ayat 5 and Surah 9 ayat 29 was addressed for the situation it was revealed. It was to address particular groups that at that time who broke treaties with Prophet Muhammad about spreading Islam, and was not about eliminating the people of the book if they do not embrace Islam. It is about a symbol of political dominance and sovereignty about jizya. The verse Surah 2 ayat 29 is directed to Muslim of 7th century Arab society, and it is not addressed to Muslim of the 21st century. So people who still use jihad as a purpose of using force under the name of Islam is still not correct in when they use these when they use these verses, because it was specifically for the time of the Prophet Muhammad. Next will be explained by Sita.
Okay, next slide, please. Hello. Okay, thank you. So first, we're going to talk about the kill them theory. So whenever the Quran comments the killing of non-Muslims, it is dependent on wherever or they act or the way they act. Surah 2 verse 191 mentions expelling non-Muslims from places where Muslims are expelled. On occasion, the phrase "kill them" has been used to refer to specific groups of people. For some reason, the rule of killing do not apply to non-Muslims. Islamists allow the killing of Muslims in certain cases, such as in rebellions. And the contextual and linguistic analysis shows that the Killing Quran does not permit the killing of idolaters. The Quran, in general, forbids the crime of genocide, unless Surah 5, verse 32 is the most relevant. Some Quranic verses and Prophet Muhammad's practice can be cited to support this point. The first is divided into two parts: the murder of an innocent person and saving lives. The murder section of the verse can be used to help prevent or punish genocide crimes, while the rescue sections can be called for humanitarian intervention. This emphasized the Quran's ultimate goal of preventing the killing of all innocent people. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, in effect, the Tabuk expedition began after Surah 9, verse 29 granted permissions to fight the people of the book, and Surah 9, verse 29 is thus regarded as a prelude to the Battle of Tabuk. When the Prophet Muhammad arrived in Tabuk, the governor of Ayla, Rubah, uh, made a peace treaty with him by agreeing to pay jizya. 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 Okay, I'm sorry if I'm mistaken. The people of Jerba and Adruh also agreed to pay jizya to the Prophet Muhammad, and he drafted the agreements for each of them. Um, all, all of them were non-Muslims. Following the Prophet Muhammad's death, the majority of the former polytheist tribes has embraced Islam during the Prophet's lifetime, renounced Islam, and attempt to secede from the Muslim polity. Some even attempt to invade Medina, the Islamic State's capital. The first caliph, Abu Bakr, dispatched forces to suppress secessionist tribes and restore the right of Islamic government. Before sending him as a reinforcement to the Kindah expedition, he gave the commander Muhajir the following order: "1. If this letter of mine reaches you before you arrive the victory, then uh, if you conquer the enemy, kill the fighting men, and take offspring captive if you took them by force." If Surah 9 verse 5 meant killing all polytheists, Abu Bakr would have given different instructions, which is kill them all when you capture them. The practice of the Prophet Muhammad and Caliph Abu Bakr suggests that Surah 9 verse 5 and 29 did not repeal Surah 22 verse 33. And Surah 2, I'm sorry, it's still in the previous slide. Yes, thank you. Um, and Surah 2, verse 190, or allowed the genocide of polytheists. Without a doubt, the Quran declares Islam to be a religion for all humanity. There is also no doubt that the Quran instructs its followers to spread Islam's message through the world. However, the offensive jihadi theory does not support the examination of the Quran for three reasons. First, contextual interpretations of the verse on which they rely affect their meanings. The first do not support the offensive jihad theory. And second, the Quran lays out a complicated set of rules for spreading Islam that do not include the use of force. And then the last one is third, their interpretations goes against the Quranic code of armed conflict, which is based on the principle of neutrality. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So the next thing that we're going to discuss is the anticipatory use of force. Well, the Quran also allows for the necessary preparations and use of force when attacking in Muslims' lands is imminent. It was a practice among the Arab tribes to fight for a peace treaty, but in many cases the terms of the treaty were never honest. Treaty violations have two implications. First, making agreements with non-Muslims is not only permissible but in fact desirable. And second, Muslims can use force in anticipation only if when others openly hostile to them. It is obligatory for the Muslim head of the government um, or their representative to inform the enemy ahead of time of the absence of pacts and treaties. Fighting without this kind of prior notice is illegal or it is not allowed in the Quran and Islam. So the next material will be explained by Sheshe. Thank you.
Okay, we will continue about the topic who can declare hijab. So, after decision is taken by mutual consultation, the citizens of Muslim state are required to follow the decision of those its authority because the Quran in Surah um, for 59 state the we who believe obey Allah and obey the messenger and the host just with authority among you. The Quran said the Prophet as the procedure for the resolution of differences among Muslims, each the rule and the rule. If they differ in anything among yourself, refers to Allah and His Messenger that is best the most suitable for the final determination. Non-state actor or Muslim urban groups within a Muslim state cannot declare jihad on behalf of a Muslim state with another state. Al-Qaeda or armed group in Pakistan cannot declare jihad on behalf of Pakistan against the international security assistance force in Afghanistan. So the armed groups outside Muslim state, Hezbollah, have a different status. They are not under the authority of Caliph or rule within a Muslim state. Whatever decision they may make will be not considered against the authority of Muslim Caliph. Next. Uh, next week, the previous slide, please. Okay, we continue with the limitation on the use of force. There's some point. The first point is the military necessity. The Quran allows that only the extent the degree of the force necessary to achieve military objective be used. On several occasions, the Quran says the one should fight the attackers until they are defeated. Restrained from mischief, fitna, or choose peace instead of war. Um, in verse to 163, 193, the objective into the fitna, but in the other party since from the fitna and receiving not alert. And then there are this, and then the others of Quran, verse to 191 impose the limitation of place, discard mosque, where is, and then the verse to 164 impose limitation of time, including discard mosque. Next. Second point is the distinction. If it is necessary to hit a particular target and it is impossible to distinguish military from non-military targets, or if every effort is made to distinguish between them, then any resulting collateral damage is acceptable. Acceptable damage is allowed, but distinction remains one of the basic principles of Islamic law of qital. Thirdly, Muslims are warned not to transgress the limits set by Allah and the Prophet Muhammad. Next. Uh, the third point is the proportionality. Proportionality is the third key rule of the Islamic law of qital. The principle is clearly laid down in the Quran, and the several verses may be cited to support it. The one who does something will not be punished, but in the equal proportion. Then the one who forgive and opts for compromise has his reward undertaken by Allah. And if you were to harm to them in retaliation, harm them to the measure you were harmed. The Prophet Muhammad swore that he would kill 30 people, and some authors said Prophet Muhammad would kill 70 people in reference. When the Muslim fighters heard the Prophet Muhammad say this, they become angry, and swore to cut their enemies into pieces. On this occasion, verse 60, 100 to 126 has referred to prevent Muslims from committing such as excesses. Harm them to the measure you were harmed. Like many other verse, like verse 16, 100, 126 can be interpreted into two ways. One is to lay down the principle of proportionality, and then the other is to prohibit mutilation. Next, the third point, the last point is the fairness and prescribable by God in every matter. So if you kill in a fair way. It doesn't behove Muslim to slay women or children or men aged, bedridden or blind because of positions to fight are the only occasion which make slaughter allowable and such person incapable of this. This indicates that non-combatant must be harmed. When Mecca was occurring in Hijaz, the Prophet Muhammad declared a general amnesty for Mecca, even though they had persecuted and forced him to migrate from Mecca to Medina. Concern for humanity runs through other Islamic principles as well. Some of those who could not be moved because of damage their bodies were burned in the spot. After the Battle of Khadak, the Prophet Muhammad handed over the uh, excuse me, sorry. Okay. After the burial of Khadak, the Prophet Muhammad handed over the dead bodies of the enemy and refused to take money for them. Islamic law allows only able-bodied men to fight and be killed during qital. It is forbid mutilation and urges a respect for the dead. All these principles indicate a concern for humanity, which is in the line and Quranic concept that all mankind in one community. And the next presentation will be held by Gibran.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. For the conclusion, it was a practice among the Arab tribes to fight for a peace treaty. However, in many cases, the terms of the treaty were never harnessed. The use of force under Islamic law comes to solve this situation that not going fit in with Muslims that wants to live peacefully and have the freedom to worship their God. It's in line with Maududi's argument that Muslims should serve all mankind, and the best way to do so it is to invite to embrace good and prevent it from doing evil. Good and evil are based on its understanding of the true teachings of Islam, because actually the Muslim believe Quranic concept that all mankind is one community. However, Muslim states must think twice before ratifying or acceding to an international treaty, because any enabling legislation can be challenged in domestic courts. After ratification or accession, they would not be able to invoke municipal law for failing to implement international law. Muslim states tend to ratify or accede to those instruments of international law which, in their view, are compatible with Islamic law. For example, the four 1949 Geneva Convention and diplomatic conventions. Okay, thank you for your attention, guys.
All right, thank you, Gibran. Thank you everybody for your presentation. So that is all the end of our presentation. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. You can stop the recording, Gibran.